Chapter 4 Monday, April 1st and Tuesday, April 2nd of 2013. Monday morning, I left home at 2:30 a.m. for a business appointment out of state. Jenny was still sleeping when I left, and as odd as her behavior had been, it was still a minor issue when I considered the big picture. Throughout my drive that morning, my only concern was the seizures. What caused them? Why now? Will they be permanently brought under control? But ultimately, and most importantly, how will this change Jenny's life in the long run? Not once on that drive did I give a thought to how she was behaving. Barb took Jenny to the doctor appointment that morning, and in what proved to be a pattern of the early stage of her illness, Jenny was able to maintain relatively normal behavior during the visit. While the doctor listened to Barb's concern, Jenny was clearly uncomfortable trying to contain her hyperactivity. Yet, once again, the diagnosis was that Jenny is having a reaction to her medication, and it would just take some time to adjust. As before, we accepted the diagnosis and believed Jenny's behavior was just a bizarre short-term condition that would soon be forgotten. However, by that evening, the rate of change in Jenny's condition was escalating at a noticeable rate. As I describe all of this now, it is embarrassing that I was willing to accept what the doctor said and that I was willing to ride it out. After spending the weekend with us, Jenny's sister, Michelle, had departed to return to her own home that morning. John, Barb, and I began a vigil of working together to ensure Jenny was supervised by a family member at all times. What kept us dedicated to this task was the anticipation of the appointment with the neurologist that was scheduled for that Friday, 4 days away. Surely that doctor would have some clearer answers or make some more adjustments to the medication to get Jenny back to being herself, and life would have some semblance of normalcy again. Yet by Tuesday, Barb and I were convinced that Jenny's behavioral changes had to be caused by something more than simply her body adjusting to the new medication. Jenny was talking almost constantly, and her words began to become garbled. What was more concerning was there was no thought process, as her comments became even more incomplete and random in their order. If we would try to respond to what she had said or even question what she meant, it was almost as if she hadn't heard us speak and she would just continue on with the next random comment. She was also having a hard time sitting still for any length of time. As Jenny continued to babble with increasing verbosity, verbal exchanges became more difficult as we could not make sense of her choice of words. In addition to her hyperactivity had reached a point that she'd had little quality sleep since Saturday. Her body was clearly tired, even if her mind had little interest in resting. Ironically, Jenny understood that she wanted and needed to sleep, and so she would go lie down and attempt to nap, but only moments later she would get up. There was never a specific reason to get up. She seemed to simply want to talk some more. Whatever was on her mind just had to be spoken. Yet as we did what we needed to do to manage Jenny while waiting for the appointment with the neurologist, it was our lack of understanding about what was happening that was harder for us to accept than the task of dealing with the problem itself. This led us to begin looking to anyone who might have some kind of answer. Later in the day on Tuesday, John took Jenny to a chiropractor that his family trusted and had visited many times over the years. We all hoped that he might have some answers and be able to shed some light on the situation for us. Sure enough, John called immediately following the appointment. Problem solved, he proclaimed. Jenny could be heard in the background chanting, "We figured it out, we figured it out." I remember her sounding very robotic and even rehearsed. As I recall, the explanation provided by the chiropractor was that Jenny had something pinched in her neck that was limiting the blood flow to her head. We all desperately wanted to believe that this was the answer. Jenny even called Michelle to explain that the chiropractor had fixed her and it was all solved. While Michelle listened to Jenny, she was more level-headed than the rest of us and did not accept the diagnosis. Because Michelle had not experienced the strain of the previous 4 days of dealing directly with Jenny, she was not as inclined as we were to accept any diagnosis that sounded plausible. As relieved as I was by the call from John, and as much as I wanted it to be true, I remained only cautiously optimistic. In just 5 days I had already grown accustomed to the fact that Jenny's condition changed constantly. While I was hopeful, I did not allow myself to relax too much at this bit of news. Too much had transpired, and the trend was too consistent to be confident that this wasn't just a momentary reprieve from what we had been witnessing. What I now know, because of all we would witness in the coming weeks, is that Jenny was simply processing the explanations offered by other people in her own way. Despite the illness that had already begun to take control of her mind, Jenny was able to adjust her behavior for short periods based on new information she received. Somehow this also provided her with the ability to act normal when non-family members were present. A doctor had treated her, there was a plausible explanation for the problem, and at least for a short time, her body reacted positively. Unfortunately, and perhaps as expected, it wasn't very long before Jenny returned to the behavior she was exhibiting before the visit to the chiropractor. By Tuesday evening her hyperactivity and the nature of her random thoughts concerned us enough that the three of us agreed Jenny should not be left alone at any time. Not even at night when she slept, or when she would try to sleep. When we hoped she would sleep, so we could sleep ourselves.